All right, welcome everybody to the second live event organized by Telescope Live. Today we're going to observe the great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn directly from Chile. We're going to connect remotely from one of our Chilean observatory, from our Chilean telescopes, and we're going to observe Jupiter and Saturn coming close together as never before. Right, so my name is Marco Rocchetto and I'm the founder of Telescope Live. And let's start with a very short agenda of what we're going to do today. First of all, I'd like to give you a short introduction about astrophotography and what it means, about remote imaging in general, and about Telescope Live and what we do and what we offer. After that, I have a first announcement to make to our Telescope Live community, but also to all the new users and people we have here today. Then we move on to the Great Conjunction. Of course, today we're here to observe it. We're going to talk a little bit about it, why it's special, why it's a rare event, and then we're going to connect to Chile. Apologies for the typo here. This was from before. We're going to connect to our Chilean telescope to observe the live event from there. The sun is setting right now. It's at around -1 degrees. We need to wait a little bit until it's dark enough so that we can actually see the two planets. Then we have some question time. So you can ask questions both in our Q&A section in Zoom. So some of our users are connected on Zoom. You should find a Q&A button that allows you to ask questions. And you can do that on YouTube as well. And we'll be very happy to answer your questions throughout the event. After that, we will have a second announcement. It's a special gift for current Telescope Live users and future Telescope Live users. And stay until the end of this event because we'll have presentations from some world-renowned astrophotographers. Here today we have Nick Simonek, Adam Block, and Peter Jenkins, who will give us a short presentation at the very end of this live event. All right, so what is Telescope Live? Well, I like to define it as the new home for astrophotography. We offer a whole new way to observe the night sky, and I hope that tonight I'm going to give you, and we are going to give you, a glimpse of what we can do with remote imaging. So I'm sure most of you know what astrophotography is, but let me just clarify that. Astrophotography is the art of taking pictures of celestial objects, such as galaxies, nebulae, and planets like today. So in a typical setup, you have a camera mounted on a telescope to record the light coming through the telescope as seen by the telescope. And then once you get these images, which we call raw images, you post-process them, you combine them together to create some of the stunning pictures that you've seen in our Instagram, if you follow us, or online, or in many prints and magazines. So this is the result of astrophotography, which is the result of taking images from telescopes and of post-processing. And if you stay until the end of today's event, you'll hear from some of the best astrophotographers what it means to go from the raw images that you acquire from a telescope, especially from Telescope Live, to the stunning, beautiful pictures you see here. So let me talk to you a little bit about the common enemies of astrophotographers. One of the reasons you might be here today is because there's bad weather. You can't go out and observe the Great Conjunction because the weather is poor. And this is a common issue that we all experience. I normally live in London, where we have bad weather 80% of the time. And even when it's clear and I go out, I face another issue, which is light pollution. So if you live in a big city like me, even if it's clear, even if it's crystal clear, you go out at night and you see a few stars. You'll never be able to see the Milky Way. You'll never be able to do astrophotography. So that's a second big issue. Then we have the issue of location. As you, I'm sure, know, the southern and northern hemisphere have different skies. So your night sky depends on your location in the map. So if you're in the northern hemisphere, you can't simply observe southern hemisphere targets, and you need to take your gears, take your cameras, travel to the southern hemisphere to see them. And finally, one of the major issues, I guess, for most of us is the lack of time. Even if all the other elements were favorable, clear weather, good dark skies, the lack of time is one of the major issues. We don't simply have the time to take all our gears, go out, take pictures, and then post-process them. Now, Telescope Live wants to be the solution to all these problems. So Telescope Live is a remote imaging service. It's a website, a web platform that allows you to use professional telescopes located in different sites around the world from the comfort of your home. And thanks to that, you can forget about bad weather conditions. This is because our telescopes are located under the best skies. You'll soon see what I mean when we connect to Chile. And they're also located very, very far away from cities. They are up in the mountains or in the deserts, the equivalent of paradise, really, for every astrophotographer. And you can also observe from both hemispheres, because we do have telescopes in both the southern and northern hemispheres. And the two events we hosted today want to demonstrate this. We've observed the same event from Spain earlier today, that's in the northern hemisphere, and we're now observing it from the southern hemisphere at a different time. And in both cases, we had great weather and very dark skies. And lastly, about time. Well, a remote imaging service allows you to cut through a lot of nuances that are usually common when you do astrophotography. Setup times, waste time due to poor quality, and so on. So Telescope Live does offer you a very nice way to get images in a matter of no time. Let's have a look at the Telescope Live network. I want to start with Chile, so El Sos Observatory. It's where we're connecting today. We have 5 telescopes, 2 50-centimeter telescopes, the ones you see in the top right, 2 of them, a 1-meter telescope, a large 1-meter reflector on the top left, a wide field refractor on the left, bottom left, and then a 60-centimeter reflector that we're going to use today to observe the Great Conjunction. So I'd like to pass the floor to Vincent, who's in Santiago right now, who's going to connect with Rodrigo, who's in El Sos Observatory, and he will give you a quick tour of El Sos Observatory. So let me stop this share and I'll hand over to Vincent. So Vincent, you're muted. You just need to unmute yourself.
Here I am. Good evening, everyone. You can see me. So now I am in Santiago, and I will share with my connection with Rodrigo in El Sauce to show you a bit around and see what El Sauce telescopes are. Okay, you should see the telescope. You can still hear me. Yeah, so this is the 24-inch telescope from Telescope Live, which is real time. So it's just pointing at Jupiter and Saturn right now, and we'll move a bit around. So we are inside the main building. Behind us, we have the 1-meter telescope on the biggest dome on the left, and the 50-centimeter telescope on the right, which are also telescope from Telescope and which are also available on the Telescope Live network. And if we go a bit around, we can see the other telescopes of the building, where we have this is a 14-inch. Behind we have a 15-inch, 50 inches, and another 24-inch in the back. And Rodrigo will now go outside the building to show us the facilities. He will cross the main building, which is the building we did at the very beginning of the observatory. It was the first building we actually manufactured, and which is also our living room. So we have our living facility here for the workers and for the people visiting on site. here we have a bit of walking, and you can see the wonderful landscapes. We are situated 1,600 meters above sea level, and we can see in the background the mountain at the very back is where Vera Rubin telescope is going to be installed, and where Gemini telescope is. It's about 30 kilometers away from where we are. And on the left, we are making more platforms because, as I was saying in the beginning, on site, we currently host 51 telescopes, but we are making 2 more buildings for hosting 22 more. And this is the second building. Rodrigo's walking. On the left, there's a platform where we'll host soon a new 1-meter telescope. And the building where we are getting here is our largest building, which is a copy of the new one we are making, in which we can host telescope a bit larger, up to 70 centimeter or even 1-meter telescope. So we'll see inside there is an Officina Stellare 70 centimeter telescope, which is exactly the same telescope which is installed in Spain and used by Officina Stellare. But this one belongs to an amateur astronomer's private one. On the left here, we have our solar plant, which consists of 120 solar panels of 300 watts. And this here is the 70 centimeter telescope from Officina Stellare that you can
And
use.
let me just say that we have an identical telescope in Spain. So the telescope that we used earlier from Spain is exactly like this one. So it's nice to see it here as well.
Exactly. And now we are just in the middle of all telescope. We have another CDK 17-inch here, a 20-inch in the background, a 20-inch behind. Here it's an Officina Stellare in the back of 300 millimeters f2.8. This is the 17-inch from Martin Puck, and another few amateur astronomers are being installed here from many countries over the world. And we are lucky because where we are, we have very small winds and very flat winds, which give us very good seeing. So if you look at the registers of seeing, we can have frequently below arc-second seeings. We can make very, very sharp images of the targets we are observing.
Thank you, Vince. And if you've been with us earlier from Spain, you'll see that we have a significant better quality of the images here, just because the seeing is so good. All right, well, Vincent, thank you very much for showing us around. I know it took a bit of effort, but it was great. It's nice to see ELSOS remotely and live again. Thanks
for the invitation, and we're happy to show you around.
Thank you. All right, so I'll take over again. I'll share my screen. Let's see. Here we are. You should be able to see my presentation again. Right, so we've just been in ELSOS in Chile. Earlier today, we were in Spain at IC Astronomy. We used the 70 centimeter telescope you see at the bottom there to observe the Great Conjunction. It was great. It was clear. And we have another wide field refractor, a Takahashi 106, 2 actually identical systems, Takahashi 106, SPA 1 and SPA 3, like the one at the top right. And finally, sorry, wrong slide. And finally, we have another observatory in Australia. That's Heavens Mirror in North South Wales, in which we have another wide field refractor. Now, in order to use these telescopes and to get fantastic images of deep sky objects, we offer within the Telescope Live platform 3 remote observing modalities. Now, these are called one-click observations, and these are the easiest way to obtain quick images, quick color images of deep sky objects using all the telescopes that we have in our platform. You basically can select from a range of objects that we refresh every week or so, and you can basically take data from these telescopes. You'll obtain a color image straight away, but you'll also get access to the raw images, the black and white raw images that can then be used to create an even more stunning astrophotography picture. And later in the event today, we'll show you what that means. So if you're just getting started, one-click observations are a great way to learn your way through astrophotography. We then have pro datasets. These are basically complete datasets, raw datasets, datasets of raw images that you can use straight away to create some stunning astrophotography pictures. Some of the datasets we offer have tens and tens of hours of integration time that will get you great results. And finally, we have advanced requests. If you are a very demanding astrophotographer, or you want to take control of every aspect of your observations, then you can use advanced requests, in which you can select your image series, you can select the filters you want to use, the exposure times, the scheduling, and so on. So these are the 3 observing modalities that we offer within Telescope Live. They are automated in the way that once you set up your observation, a one-click observation or even an advanced request, our automated systems will basically take over and they will schedule the observation through our telescopes. The observing modality we're using today is pure live observing. We're connecting to the computer that controls the telescope, and we're going to observe live the event. This usually happens in a completely automated way when we use Telescope Live. The other thing I would like to say is that once you are part of Telescope Live, you will be able to learn from the best. We have lots of video tutorials and articles from our official tutors, and they are some of the most world-renowned astrophotographers who are with us today. And as I said before, stay until the end of the event to hear from them some stories around astrophotography and some pretty images that they've been able to acquire over the last few months and years. Okay, so I have a first announcement to make, mostly to our existing community, but also to everybody else that is with us today. We are launching today our virtual community. It's a Facebook group, and we thought that beside our own platform, we needed a virtual living room where our users will be able to gather in a friendlier way and start conversations together in a more immediate manner. So join the group today. We've opened it today. You can search Telescope Live Community on Facebook, join, and you can start a discussion about any topic connected to astrophotography, about astronomy, techniques, and news. And bear in mind that it doesn't need to be related to the Telescope Live platform or remote imaging. It's really just a place where people with common interests in astrophotography and astronomy can share their ideas and questions. Now, the last thing I want to say before going into the event we're observing today, it's, well, if you're not a Telescope Live user, you can go to telescope.live, or you can Google it and you can start your 1-month free trial. We offer what you've seen before, one-click observations, pro data sets for free for a month. Join our silver plan and you'll be able to get started with astrophotography and access all the resources we offer. All right, so I'll hand over to Alex, who's going to give you a brief introduction to what we are observing tonight, while I jump into the telescope you've seen earlier to do some setup.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Alex. I spoke a bit earlier with the group in here in the Zoom meeting. I'm a co-founder of Telescope Live, and just going to quickly talk you through what the Great Conjunction actually is, you know, behind what is actually going on here to make this a special event. So firstly, we need to look at what is actually going on in the night sky. And if I click here, it should be able to advance the slide. Here we go. So we have Jupiter and Saturn currently are in the night sky, coalesced to a single point. And what's happened here is that their orbits around the sun have finally come to a point where they can be observed in a single line of sight. And this can be seen with almost every telescope, or probably every telescope or astrophotography imaging device. The separation between the planets is so small, 6 arc minutes, which is a really, really tiny, section of the night sky that these are separated by. Over the past few months, these planets are becoming closer and closer together. And you can see here the last 2 months in particular, looking every 10 days, they've actually become incredibly close. And now if you were to go out and look at this with the naked eye, it would be a single point of light. And this is something that's quite remarkable in that it's an event similar to Neowise that we had a few months ago, in that anyone can go outside and have a look at this. You don't need to be an astrophotographer to be able to take part and to look at this event. Now, the real question is, why is this so rare? Why is this the great conjunction? The reason is because it just doesn't happen very often. The last time this actually happened was 400 years ago, in 1623. And you can see here an old diagram from the 1700s where they've taken annotations and noted down the position of Saturn and Jupiter, over many, many years. And this is something that's, they've been waiting for since then to actually happen again. And really this speaks volume of how rare and how precious this conjunction is for people to observe, in that, it's a very rare occurrence, and it won't be one that we'll have again for at least another 400 years. So as I said, you can go out and look at this yourself, and you can take photos with your phone or DSLR, any imaging device really, to capture this moment, or just have a look at it through binoculars or with your own naked eye. So about 45 minutes after sunset, looking southwest, you'll see a very, very bright star. You may be able to distinguish between the two, depending on when you look at it over the next sort of week or so. But you won't be able to miss it, and it's definitely worth going out, even if it's getting dark wherever you're watching from and it's clear skies. You'll be able to go out and see this. But not to worry if it's cloudy this evening. The stars will be the planets will be fairly close together over the next couple of weeks, and if you're into observing this over the next month or so, you'll see them slowly grow further and further apart, to the point where you'll be waiting another 400 years for them to meet up again. So I think now we'll hand back over to Marco, who's going to take us over to the telescope in Chile, and we'll have a look at the conjunction itself.
Thank you very much, Alex. So in the last couple of minutes, I jumped on the CDK 24 inches in Chile, and I'll share my screen. We should be able to. Give me a second. Here we are. So this is what we normally do when we use a telescope. We use a very common software, a planetarium software, to control our telescope when we do it live. And this is the sky. And as you can see here, we are pointing at Jupiter and Saturn. They are down there. So we've already slewed, and we use Maxim DL to observe the conjunction. So let me switch to Maxim DL. And here we are. So these are Jupiter and Saturn as close as ever. This is just 6 arc minutes. This is an angular distance of 6 arc minutes. And this is the rarity of the event. We've never been able to see the two planets so close together with a telescope, actually. Thinking about this, it's the first time we're able to image with a CCD camera through a telescope the two planets so close together. You can see Saturn up here with its rings. You can see Jupiter, and if you zoom in with your eyes, you can start to see some bands in Jupiter atmospheres, and you'll notice that the two planets have a very different brightness. So Saturn is very dim, Jupiter is very, very bright, and it's very difficult, if not impossible, to have a single stretch, a single linear stretch. You have both planets were well exposed. So this is a kind of a compromise to be able to see both planets. Right, so we'll leave the conjunction there. It's live. We are exposing very rapidly. So we're seeing this live happening right now. And we'd like to have you asking questions. So we'll have a bit of a Q&A, so you can ask questions, and we will answer your questions. Our panel here will answer your questions. Actually, we can have a quick round of introductions from our panelists. We have Adam, Peter, and Nick who joined. So maybe you can say hi and say what you do and why you're here. Maybe Adam, you can start. You can unmute.
Can you hear me, Marco?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
I just wanted an opportunity more than a introduction to, if you allow me to share the screen, I can show something that I think would be relevant to what you're showing right now.
Please do.
Okay, I think this is a good one. So, though I did this yesterday, it would be the same circumstance that you are doing right now, which is observing, you know, in the bright twilight. As it gets darker, it'll presumably be easier to see. But if you could look through the telescope with a camera, one-shot color camera video, this is approximately what you would see. Can you see Jupiter here and Saturn there? Anyone?
Yeah, I guess we can see it. Yes, it's
okay. That's actually video captured through a telescope similar in size to what you're doing right now. And it just gives you the idea of actually the difficulty. You have to wait for it to get a little darker to do a whole lot more. Okay, I'll stop sharing. So that's all I wanted to show you. I just wanted to, I think that gives you a good idea of what it looks like right now.
Thank you, Adam. Hand over to Peter.
Hi, you want another introduction again? So I'm Peter Jenkins, amateur astronomer based in the UK. I've been taking photographs of the night sky for about 10 years. The last 7 in narrowband, and with my own setup from here, telescope live for the last 12 months.
Thank you, Peter. Over to Nick.
Thanks, Marco. Yep, I'm Nick. Also an amateur astronomer based in the UK, in the cloudy, light polluted UK. I've been an astrophotographer for about 35 years now, and I've seen the introduction of digital imaging right from its very earliest days. So it's been a very exciting ride. Also a telescope live user for about a year now. And I'll be happy to show some of the images that I've taken using the Telescope Live platform a bit later on in this live presentation.
Thank you, Nick. Chantal, do we already have some good questions we can answer? You're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so a very popular question is, are we going to provide any kind of image after this conjunction?
Yes, I mean, if you're looking at the screen right now, we've just hit auto save. So we're saving images, lots of images, every 0.2 seconds. And we'll provide them, and you will be able to stack them together and to obtain a slightly high resolution image. But let me say that, you know, what we're trying to do today is really to observe the event in itself. We're not trying to do high resolution imaging of these two planets. High resolution imaging is possible, but requires different techniques. They're closer to what Adam has just shown. You need to make a video, basically, of the planet, looking very, very closely with a very narrow field of view. And more on this in a bit. Maybe I can actually answer the question in this way. I said that I would have made 2 announcements, and this is the second one. Now, what we're doing here is deep sky imaging. We're using a deep sky telescope with a deep sky camera to observe these two planets. And you might not be so satisfied with the resolution and the resolution of these two planets. Now, if you want to do high resolution imaging, you need to use a new observing modality. And what we're launching today is a new observing modality that we're going to offer from January, actually. So can you see the resolution and the quality of the images here? Saturn, Jupiter, Mars. These have all been obtained with one of our telescopes, the 1 meter telescope installed in Chile, very close to the one you've seen. This is from Chilescope, our partner Chilescope. And well, this telescope is equipped with 2 cameras. The one you've always used, if you're one of our users, is the one you see here. It's an FLI camera. On the other side, we have a planetary imaging camera. It's a different type of camera. It's a CMOS camera that takes very short exposures. And through a technique called LAC imaging, you can obtain a video, basically, of your planet, and you can then stack together the best quality images to obtain a very high resolution picture, such as the one you see here. And, you know, this is very different from what we're seeing right now. It would be impossible to achieve the same result live without post-processing. So the images I've just shown you are very high resolution images that are obtained through lots of post-processing. Here, we're just observing it live. But, you know, I'm happy to say that from January, we are going to offer high resolution imaging of planets. And that's going to be done in a different way. So if so far you've been used to submit your observations to the network and everything is done automatically, with planetary imaging, you actually connect live, as we're doing now, with one of our staff members to take the images of the planet. And you'll then be able to have a quick introduction on how to process them with software. All right, so I went a little bit over and I spoiled the announcement, but if there's another question, we can go ahead.
Yes, here's a question. How are you doing the focus? Is it automated? What program are you using?
Right, so this is a very good question. Every time you point at the target in the sky, you need to be sure that your telescope is well focused, especially when your scope is big, like this one with a very long focal length. Getting the focus right is critical. And what changes basically, it's the temperature. So as the temperature varies, the telescope will actually change in size. I mean, the focal length will change only slightly, and you need to compensate for that, and you compensate through focusing the telescope. So we have a robotic focuser which moves the optical train slightly back and forth. I can show it here. This is the software we use. Now, this is of course a proprietary software that controls the focuser. Now, the way in which we achieve focus is through autofocusing. So we use Focus Max, which is a commercial software available, which basically does that for you. So it's all automated, and through some intelligent algorithms, it will find the best focus position for the current time. Now, it's tricky though, because focus changes as a function of temperature, as I said before. And here in this graph, you can see how temperature changes very rapidly, especially in Chile. So between daytime and nighttime, the temperature drops very, very rapidly. And this means that you need to be very reactive in adapting your focus. And you can do this in 2 ways. You can compensate for temperature. So if you run some intelligent models, you can automatically compensate for temperature. But there's very little you can do really, because the effect is non-linear, so it's not linearly dependent on temperature exclusively. So what we end up doing is refocusing through an autofocus routine quite often. And actually, today we're observing this event. We should, in theory, refocus the telescope in a bit. But because we're not interested in getting, the best seeing conditions or the PSF conditions will just focus it once. Thank you for the question.
Thank you for answering. And I have another one here, and I think it have been done for this moment, but I would like also to apply it for a wider experience. And the question is, have you encountered much Starlink satellites crossing the viewing?
Well, this is a very good question. It's a topic we've encountered in our blog a few times. We're all very worried about Starlink in a way, because you know, these are train of satellites that will go through the sky more and more. I must say I've seen them live from Spain with my eyes, but as far as I know, we haven't yet seen one of them with our telescopes. And one of the reasons is that they're mostly visible at dusk or just after sunset and just before sunrise. Therefore, I suppose, you know, the effect is a little bit limited during the night. But maybe Adam, Nick, and Peter, you've got different experience here. Maybe you've seen them in some of your frames.
Actually, Marco, this is one of the things that I study in my profession. So I'm part of a team which is analyzing the Starlink satellites in order to understand how bright they are. This will not only help the professional astronomy community, but it'll also help the operators of the telescopes, because they are trying to mitigate some of the effects, how much light that the satellites reflect and so on. And there's a combination of two things, either by changing the color of the satellite by painting it, or by perhaps rotating it so that as it comes around, the solar panels don't reflect so brightly. If I had 10 more seconds, I can actually show you what I mean.
Yeah, please go ahead. I think it's a very interesting.
Okay, let me show you. So I'm actually, well, by the way, here it is over one of the domes on top of Mount Lemmon. In just a few minutes here, my little telescope is about to open. It's waiting to open in 12 minutes. So it hasn't opened yet, but it will shortly. But this is an example of an image from last night. And so what we do is we automatically point the telescope at a position where one of the Starlinks will pass through the field, and then do photometry on the streak. So we don't need a track on it. You just do photometry on the streak. And then through a survey of hundreds, if not thousands of times of observing the Starlink satellites, you can develop a catalog of their brightness with regards to their phase angle, with regards to what their range is, all of that. And then you can model the brightness and how they'll impact, you know, astronomy in general, but also in terms of impact what the operators of these satellites are going to do. And it's not only Starlink, there's OneWeb, there are a number of people launching tons of these satellites into the sky. So I just wanted to show you a cool streak, and that it is an area of study for people now, because it's becoming an important thing.
Thank you very much, Adam.
While I have the screen, would you mind if I actually do one more thing? Because I think I actually have to go. So would you mind if I shoot? Okay, let me just show you the...
I think you need to share again. Yep.
Yeah, I know. Let me just show you the something that Alex requested, because it deals with the conjunction, not with the other things. The question was, you know, given the data that I took last night, which is similar to what you're doing right now, what do you get? So I didn't use a video, actually. I just took snapshots using this Canon camera that I attached to the telescope. But I did do many of them so that I could add them, stack them together. And this is what you get. It's not a high resolution picture, but you can basically see that that looks like Jupiter and that looks like Saturn, right? And then eventually, and this is the part I haven't done, so this is fake, but it's close. I will be able to put these together in order to generate something that looks like this is basically the view through the telescope with this camera attached, processed in color, roughly. This is what I'm going for. It's not correct because the the moons and things are too bright. I need to do it correctly so that it won't be like that, but it's close. It's the right idea. So I just wanted to show you that was the work in progress, and this is what you could try to do if you were doing this kind of color imagery of the event. But you guys are showing it live, showing what it looks like, but without any processing. So there you go. Before I take off, any questions about that or anything else? No, you're muted, Marco. Marco's muted.
Oh, sorry.
Go with a question.
I want to say, Chantal, if there is any other question we want to ask Adam before he leaves.
Well, yes, I'll ask you, Adam.
Sure.
Terry from our chat just asked, are the planets themselves affected in any way by this conjunction?
Oh, I think that was a question that came up earlier in the Spain live broadcast. No, this is just an alignment of things. No one gets very excited about when the moon aligns with something in the sky, because the moon goes around and around so frequently that alignments happen much more often. But with the planet, something like this, as you see back live, much less common. And you know what this is testament to is not so much that the alignment is uncommon. It's that the precision can happen at all because most of the planets in the inner part of the solar system all orbit about in almost precisely the same plane. It's that lack of deviation in the plane of the orbits of all the planets that really makes it possible for this alignment to be in the first place. That's the actual, I think it's probably the most remarkable thing, is the fact that all the planets orbit within just, less than a fraction of a degree, that these alignments can occur because that plane is just so narrow in which they all orbit. Another thing to recognize, I don't know if anyone is paying attention to it, but we are kind of lucky that the conjunction here happened at a time where Saturn's rings are somewhat tilted towards us. One of the other interesting alignments is that the ring plane is not in the plane of the solar system, that plane that all the planets orbit about. That's why we see the rings slightly inclined there. And through the course of Saturn's orbit around the sun, we see the rings at different perspectives as we watch it orbit about the sun. It could have been that the conjunction tonight could have been where Saturn's rings were edge on and we'd barely see them. But no, you got the very best photogenic view of the conjunction. I think that's that makes it another check mark in the remarkableness of the event. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adam. Thank you for joining us today. All right, so goodbye. I think we can move on to Nick. Nick, maybe you want to start your presentation? Just to say, you might see that we're already a little bit out of focus, actually quite a bit out of focus. So while Nick shows his presentation, I'm going to refocus the telescope so we can see a clearer view of Saturn and Jupiter again.
Okay, thanks. Okay, is that visible, Marco?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. Okay, so I'd just like to give a very short presentation about what it's actually like to use the telescopes for deep sky imaging. And of course, this is where they are so excellent. As I mentioned earlier in the introduction, I've been using Telescope Live, like Peter, for about a year now, and it's been a fantastic experience. So I'd like to show you some of the images that I've taken over that last year. This actually being one of the most recent, with a fairly new addition to the platform. The telescope you see, or the lens rather, you see at the top left of the screen, which is a Nikon 200mm lens fitted with a high quality camera and a selection of filters. And the image you see on the screen is actually the large Magellanic Cloud, a satellite galaxy of our own Milky Way. But this is unusual because it's actually a narrowband image. I wouldn't use normally narrowband filters to image galaxies, but the proximity of this galaxy to us allows us to image, even with a telephoto lens, these incredible glowing gas clouds and nebulae that are associated with the large Magellanic Cloud itself. So that's, as I say, the most recent image. Now, there are many other telescopes, and we step up in size now to the Takahashi FSQ106. This telescope itself is one of a pair located in Spain. As we saw earlier on from Marco, there's also one in Australia. So this gives us brilliant access to the northern and southern hemisphere for wide field imaging. So very early on, I started imaging with that telescope in Australia and produced this, the Eta Carina Nebula. A huge target. It really does require the large flat field that these telescopes can produce to image it in its entirety. And this is actually a slightly cropped image as well. Now, the colours may look a little bit unusual. You may be used to seeing the reds of emission nebulae in the sky. This is using something called the Hubble palette with narrowband filters. I think Peter will say a little bit more about the characteristics of those filters in his presentation a little bit later. But what they allow us to do is image in great detail the contours and the features within the nebula itself. So, as I say, this is a lovely target. For me, a very exciting target because it's something we can't see from here in the northern hemisphere at all, up in Britain. So it's opened up a new vista on the sky for Peter and myself to access these lovely southern targets. This was taken with a similar telescope in Spain, where we transmitted earlier on the conjunction of the planets. And this is an example of one of the Telescope Live Oneclick observations. So all this is actually 3 separate exposures through narrowband filters, hydrogen alpha, sulfur 2 and oxygen 3. And once again, the blues and golds come from using the Hubble palette, the way that the images are combined. And I think, again, it's a testament to not only the sky quality, but the instrumentation itself, the optics and the cameras, that you can produce an image like this in just 30 minutes worth of imaging. And as a lifelong amateur astronomer and a 30-year plus astrophotographer, I'm a keen viewer of astronomical literature. And, you know, these pictures that the Telescope Live platform is taking now, you know, surpass a lot of images taken by professional telescopes of only 20 years ago. If you look at books produced that time ago, you'll be amazed to see that even with small telescopes like this, the results are actually better. And this is because of the great conditions and the great instrumentation. If you use LRGB filters like you see on this image, also of the Magellanic Cloud, the large cloud, you get quite a different view compared to the one we just saw with the narrowband filters. But you know, this is more of a traditional view that you would see in those books from a few years back. You get the typical reds from the glowing sort of hydrogen emission. Now, also sighted in Chile are 2 absolutely wonderful telescopes. I think Peter and I both agree that we actually love these telescopes. They're 20-inch reflecting telescopes on direct drive mounts, as you can see here, and they're equipped with very fast optics, f3.8, which is a really fast telescope for a 20-inch telescope. And these produce absolutely crisp and wonderful images in a very short period of time. As an amateur astrophotographer, I'm used to taking 30 or 40-hour sequences of images. But with these telescopes, they're so fast and under such great conditions, you can start to get really great images in a very short period of time. We're still on the Tarantula Nebula, but now with the 20-inch, you can see the resolution's improving, the detail in the image is improving. And once again, this is just an LRGB set of short exposures. And then, of course, as we saw earlier on, the 1 meter telescope. Well, this is a really serious piece of equipment. This is a professional level telescope. Very good optics on a very high performance drive. And again, I've used this a small amount, and the field of view is completely different now. This is still the Tarantula Nebula in the large Magellanic Cloud, but now you can see it really does fill the frame. And once again, unlike the previous image, this is a narrowband image. So once again, we get the blues and the golds and the reds of the Hubble palette. So it's a very high resolution telescope. My favorite image taken with that is this incredible galaxy NGC 1365, another deep southern target, but a perfect fit on the sensor for the 1 meter telescope. And this is probably about an hour and a half in total of exposure. So, by modern standards, that's a very short exposure, but you've got this incredible resolution from it. It literally does fill the frame, which is wonderful. And then another very popular telescope in El Source is Chile 1, the 24-inch plane wave. And this is one of the telescopes I've used the most, actually, in the last year to produce images like this. This is the wonderful southern galaxy M83. And this is a barred spiral galaxy. You can see there's a bar of star-forming material, or older stars actually, within the core. And then you get the spiral arms tending to emanate from the ends of the bars. And in some ways, this is a very representative view, we think, of how our own Milky Way galaxy would look if we could kind of fly out in a spaceship and look back at it, if our eyes were sensitive enough. But because of the legendary seeing conditions in Chile, you can see it's picked up lots of faint background galaxies. They're kind of scattered all over the field of view, as well as great resolution within the core of the galaxy itself. And if you want to test resolution, a good target for that are globular clusters. This is probably the biggest and best in the sky. Again, we can't see it from here up in Britain, but this is Omega Centauri, and you can see that it's actually an incredibly rich image. If I just zoom in on this, just on the central area, the amount of stars that are recorded in this image are absolutely incredible. And these, again, are very, very short exposures. So it's possible to produce images like this with a very limited amount of imaging time. And then also taken with the Chile 1 telescope, a very enigmatic target, a pair of, or possibly a trio of galaxies in collision. And we're seeing this just as a snapshot. These galaxy collisions occur over many millions of years. And it's even fairly well understood that when these galaxies collide, despite the colossal number of stars in each of the galaxies, the actual collision of stars itself is very rare. But what we're seeing here is the morphology of the spiral galaxy in the foreground. It's just being torn apart by the gravitational and tidal effects of the interaction with the main galaxy. So it is just a snapshot in time, but it's one of the most enigmatic galaxies to me in the sky. This is the sort of thing we only used to see in those astronomy books I talked about earlier on. And then again, this, a very enigmatic target. We're once again back with the Hubble palette. This is the Nebula NGC 3324, and this is just a small part of the Eta Carina Nebula that we saw earlier on. But again, I can refer to this Hubble palette where we map the colors to individual layers, if you like, or channels in an image. And this allows us to show these objects in great detail, in great three-dimensionality, with the quality of the data, and with a little bit of careful processing, you can produce these lovely portraits of these incredible objects. And another one here. And during the earlier presentation, I mentioned that if you show this to most astrophotographers, they may not even recognize it because it's homing right in on the interesting part of the Lagoon Nebula, which in itself is a very popular target. But again, difficult target from here in the UK. But we're seeing this in ultra high resolution by the use of these very narrow bandwidth filters. And with a little bit of selective processing, we can really examine these images, because for me, they start to look very much like images produced by the Hubble Space Telescope. You know, the quality is so good. They're really sort of wonderful images. And here's another LRGB image here. This is the Swan Nebula, or the Omega Nebula, a hugely difficult target from here in the UK. But again, from Chile and from Spain, it's a lot easier. Now, I'm not going to say too much about the image processing. We have lots of tutorials on the telescope website that cover all this kind of stuff in great detail. But for now, I'd just like you to compare the left image and the right image, because the image on the right has had a piece of relatively new software applied to it called Sharpening AI. And it seems to be a very powerful software that can really extract fine detail from the images. So the image on the left is absolutely great in its own right, but by running these software packages, you can see we've gained a little bit of resolution from the image, and it makes a huge difference when we produce the end result and apply that software. Hopefully you can see that it really produces great, nice, pin-sharp images, not only in the famous pillars of creation, but also in these so-called Bok globules that also sort of are based around the pillars of creation. And that extra gain in resolution allows you to see those really clearly. And also, let me just come out of that. Also, another piece of software called Gigapixel AI. It's actually resampling software, but it also applies this sort of artificial intelligence sharpening and denoising. And this is a very, very deep image. This is an image I took using my own remote observatory in Spain, and with a 10-inch telescope. And the image is of the galaxy M82. And this is probably about a 60 or 70 hour in total image using 5 filters, a narrowband and LRGB filters. And I hope you can see the gain in resolution on the right hand side by using this software. And if you look at the diffraction spikes from the bright star here, you can see they're really crisp and tight compared to the original image. And again, just back to the lovely images we can take using Chile 1 in this case. Once again, this is NGC 3576, a very deep nebula in the southern sky. We can't see this up here. The so-called Statue of Liberty Nebula. You can see the dark silhouette in here of the Statue of Liberty, if you like. But what I like about this target is these wonderful hoops and loops of this material. This is a hugely enigmatic target. We just don't really know what's going on here. There's so much actually going on in this nebula. It's just a wonderful target for the bigger telescopes. And the Helix Nebula, again, a very popular target. It's the sort of thing you see in all astronomy books. This was taken with the Chile 1 telescope a couple of months back now, just a deep LRGB image. And again, it's capturing the outer envelope of the nebula, the galaxies in the background, and also the radial cometary globules, this radial structure caused by the sort of high energy output from the white dwarf star. And we can also create mosaics. This is just a galaxy cluster in the southern sky, a 2-pane mosaic. You have to plan these quite carefully by using, for example, Aladdin, which allows you to point the telescopes very accurately. And then the idea is you can blend these together. I'm working on a 4-pane mosaic at the moment. I'm just waiting for the data to come through, and I'll post a tutorial on that in due course. And then just to finish, everybody loves the Orion Nebula, including myself. And this was one of my more recent images with Chile 1. And this is just something like, I think 2 or 3 exposures, 2-minute exposures. They're kept very short because this part of the nebula is incredibly bright. So we don't want to overexpose it. But just by being careful to choose the right exposure time. I didn't even bother with a luminance filter for this. It's such a bright object, but hopefully you can see on the Zoom presentation the wonderful intricate details that the telescope has captured. So I hope you've picked up on my enthusiasm for using these telescopes. It's been a brilliant year, and recommend anybody sort of sign up and have a look at the one-click observations, and you can maybe move on to doing this kind of stuff as well. So okay, I think that's the last slide. I'll stop my share, and hopefully.
Thank you very much, Nick.
Okay, thanks.
In the meantime, I refocused the telescope. It's quite out of focus. It's crazy how quickly that changes. And if some of you have used Chi 1, you'll see that sometimes you do get out of focus image, but we always try to reacquire them. Now I wanted to share the screen. How are we doing? Here we are. So the 2 planets are still there. This is reassuring. And okay, we'd like to spend the last bit of our event with Peter. So Peter, as our final presentation for tonight. So I leave the screen here. Whenever you want, Peter, you can share your screen, and we can start with your presentations. Thank you. Somebody's asking, let's see the moon. So before we switch, give me a second And let's see, great, I lost the connection. So this is what happens when you're connected remotely. Give me a second. Okay, no, oh, maybe, let's see. Here we are. So some people have asked, let's see the moons. Now, because of the stretch, you are not able to see the moons right now, but if we change the stretch, we should be able to start seeing some moons, and there they are. Yes. Ooh, okay, this is in inverse colors, but here we are, 1, 2, 3, and they change their apparent position very, very quickly. So when we observed them a few hours ago, they were in completely different positions. So this is really cool. All right, so I'll hand over to Peter now. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Marco. Are we good to go? Have you got my screen?
Yeah, we can see. Thank you.
Good. I'm going to start with one of the images that I've taken from the Chile scopes. This is the Dragons of Ara, and I think it's my favorite object. But I'm going to spend the first couple of minutes answering the questions, the frequently asked questions, or the ones I get asked most frequently, about what the techniques that we're using for imaging. And what I get asked is, well, why are you stacking images? So I just got a very quick presentation of the Rosette Nebula. This is a single image, 10 images and 100 images. And as you can see, the noise, the signal to noise ratio improves when stacking a number of images. The resultant image was this one. This is taken from my own home observatory. This is image calibration I'm asked about. And it's the fact that at Telescope Live, the images are calibrated for you, but it is possible to get the raw data as shot without calibration, and to get the calibration files, you can download those and apply the calibrations yourselves. Flats particularly interesting. There's vignetting, which is darkening around the corners of nearly all optical trains, and these are dust spots on my own telescope. The other question that I get asked is about filters and the use of the filters. This is the electromagnetic spectrum, and the visible wavelength of light is around 400 to 700 nanometers. Broadband filters, which are available on all the scopes in Telescope Live, red, green, and blue filters. And you can see the wavelengths along the bottom of the slide. There's a gap between the green and the red, and that's the wavelength of most streetlights in the UK, and anyway. Mercury vapor and sodium vapor streetlights are in that area, so the light from those doesn't come through these filters. We move on to narrowband filters. The oxygen 3, which is doubly ionized oxygen, hydrogen alpha, and sulfur, the ionized. So the wavelength, as you can see, of the oxygen 3, as we call it, there's somewhere between blue and green, the sort of cyan color. And the other two, the hydrogen and sulfur, are both in the red, a part of the spectrum. So we've got to consider how we would use those when imaging. And the Hubble palette, which Nick's shown you on quite a number of images, the red, green, and blue are mapped to the colors. The hydrogen is mapped to green, sulfur to red, and oxygen to the blue. There are other ways of mapping it. I'll just show you how that is mapped. It's in the order of the wavelengths. So sulfur is kept in red, hydrogen is shifted into the green, and the oxygen is into the blue. And that shows the tremendous amount of detail that you can get of the differences between the colors, showing where the gases are. Another way of mapping, this is a little bit different. This is a bicolor image. It's hydrogen and oxygen only. This is the Veil Nebula complex. And this is just mapped with the hydrogen in red and oxygen into the blue and green. Experimented a little bit recently with an image of the Seagull Nebula, and this is hydrogen, sulfur, sulfur in red, green, and blue. There is little or no oxygen present, although it was used for the star color. And this is an image of the Heart Nebula, which combines both. So this is the narrowband hydrogen, oxygen, and sulfur, mapped in the Hubble palette, and the stars are made from red, green, and blue exposures. Okay, so those are just the techniques that we've been using. As Marco said earlier, the access to the northern and southern hemispheres. If you're based in the northern hemisphere, there are constellations in the south that you can never see, and vice versa. So if you're in the southern hemisphere, there are constellations in the north you can't see. This is the beauty of having telescopes in both north and south. This is a screenshot of the Stellarium program, and you can see on the screen the North American and the Pelican Nebula. And I imaged those from the Telescope Live's Takahashi in Spain. So the Northern Hemisphere objects. It's possible with Stellarium to actually set it up so that it's in a different location, not your home location. And this is actually set for the view from Chile and at the altitude of El Sos Observatory. The Carina Nebula is at the top, and I've imaged that from Chile, which is this one, in the Hubble palette. And at the bottom is the Running Chicken Nebula. It's quite a strange name, this one. And as Nick says, the quality of the equipment is such that you can see block globules here and there with incredible definition in dust lanes. So the advantages of using telescopes in all the locations is the lack of light pollution, because they're so far away from any cities. This is where I image from at home in central England. And as you can see from the map, it's one of the worst light polluted areas in the UK. Maybe not quite as bad as London, but very close to it. This is my home observatory. So the light pollution, you can see from a straight light at the bottom of the garden. My home observatory, which is a shed. It's just a garden shed on casters, which pushes back to allow my telescope to come out. This is an Officina Stellari, and an image taken with that from home, which is just a little bit different and a little bit more exposures required than images taken from El Sos. The seeing is incredible. Pure, clean air. And at the altitude, well, I think someone said 1,600 meters, 1,525 meters above sea level. This is the Prawn Nebula, taken from Chile. And Thor's helmet, taken from there as well. So just a quick look at another reason to use the remote scopes is the weather in the UK. And you'll see here that in the winter, we have about 10% clear nights. In the summer, it's a little bit better. But in the summer, we have very little. In midsummer, it really doesn't get particularly dark. The sun is 12 to 18 degrees below the horizon between May and August. So there's still a lot of light from the sun in the sky. And a little table in the UK, in the south of the United Kingdom, from June till July, there's about a month where you don't really have any real dark. But if you were to move to the very north, this is Scotland, you'll see that from 22nd of April to 21st of August, it doesn't really get properly dark. Of course, when it's summer here, it's winter in the southern hemisphere. So we've got lots of long, dark nights and very clear nights. Just quoting from the information about LSOS, there's 300 clear nights a year. It's incredible. And we have about 30 in the UK. And this is the one I showed earlier, the Fighting Dragons of Ara, photographed from Chile. The different scopes available you've already seen. I think Nick's certainly shown some of them, and Marco, and we saw them on the live feed from the observatory. This is the plane wave, 610, 24-inch. And this is an image I took of the M16, the Eagle Nebula, using that scope. This is the bigger scope, the 1 meter diameter. I used that to take an image of the Trifid Nebula. And I think Nick agrees that these are my favorite scopes. There are 2 of these in Chile. Absolutely fabulous. It's an image in Hubble palette of the Swan Nebula. And I also photographed the Statue of Liberty Nebula with this object to the left of it also has an NGC number. What it is, I can't remember just now. And then there's the Australia Observatory at Heaven's Mirror. And it is a Takahashi 106. And I have only, I think, taken 1 image with that. This is an RGB image of the Carina. And from Spain, I've already showed you the image that I took from here. This an overhead view. I'm not sure which houses the telescope we used earlier this evening. And this is the image that I took from of the North America and the Pelican Nebula. This is the scope that we used to view the conjunction earlier this evening, Officina Stellari. And I haven't actually used it for any imaging yet, but I hope to very soon. And just a quick word about the quality of the data that's coming back in again. This is an image that I took from, I think it was Chile 3, no, Chile 2, of the Carina Nebula. This is 3 10-minute exposures through hydrogen alpha, oxygen, and sulfur. Were I imaging it from here, which you can't see it from here, but if I was imaging it here, I would probably spend 10 or 12 hours, whereas that is an hour and a half. And the data was just so good. And I'll just zoom in a little bit. I hope you're seeing it in the same quality I am. A staggering detail. It was so good that I decided to see what would happen if I just put together one single hydrogen alpha, oxygen, and sulfur together. And that was the result. So this is a single image, 10 minutes long. So total exposure time of 30 minutes, which is staggering. Just quick mention the website, which I think Marco showed a little bit of, that there are tutorials from Nick, Adam, and myself, and Alex. On the website, there's the processing of the North American and Pelican Nebula, which I showed a short while ago, is one of the tutorials that's available. And the data sets, I think that is the data set from of that image taken from Spain, which is available for download to practice the processing. And just show a couple more images taken from Chile. This is the Gabriela Mistral Nebula. I think Nick had a copy of it, or an image of it as well. the Lagoon Nebula, and I know that Nick's used the longer focal length scope and imaged the central portion. And I'll finish with my favorite, the fighting dragons of Ara. I absolutely love the image. Okay, thanks, folks.
Thank you, Peter, for showing these great images. And I think that the stream doesn't give you justice. As I said earlier in the previous event, you should actually go to the Telescope Live galleries, telescope.live/gallery, to see all these images in high resolution. They're really stunning. So thank you again, Peter, and thanks to all the other panelists, Nick, Adam, who's left. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Chantal. Before leaving, I'd like to share again the conjunction. This is, of course, the main reason why we're here today. You can see that Saturn is disappearing. The quality is worsening. This is because the two planets are basically setting behind the wall. So the wall is an obstruction. The planets are very low in the horizon right now. The light goes through lots of atmosphere, lots of air, so the images are distorted. So I guess, you know, this is really the end of our second event. Thank you very much for joining today. Remember, if you haven't done so, try Telescope Live for free. You can Google it, Telescope Live, or you can go to telescope.live. You can start your first month free trial. Join our community on Facebook. So Telescope Live community, search for that. And well, this is our first live event. I think it went very well. So thank you for joining, and we'll organize another one very soon. So thank you again, and goodbye.